Hello and welcome to the Chef's Backyard. I hope you enjoy this episode where we get to visit with Chris Benziger. He tells us a little bit about how he grows and bottles his beautiful wines. Have a listen.
Hi guys. Cheers. I'm here with Chris Benziger.
Yeah.
You got it. Thank you for sharing your passion for enology and your beautiful wines with the world.
John, thank you, and can't wait to see you out there in California and kick the dirt clods with you in the vineyards. It's a beautiful spot, and all you people out there, you got to come and visit and see what we do out there on Sonoma Mountain. It's pretty fun.
Cheers. Make sure you guys pick up some beautiful Benziger and imagery wines.
Cheers.
This was a special event hosted at the RD Speakeasy in San Antonio, Texas. It's a really cool place. We got to try through the imagery, Benziger, and tribute wines. Here's a little look around the room.
Before, it's a Burgundian grape, and Pinot Noir has got a reputation for being cranky, flat out. It's the cranky grape. We call her Goldilocks because she can't be too hot, she can't be too cold. She's got the reputation of being the heartbreak grape because so many times you think everything is going great and she goes sideways. She's the queen, right? Cabernet being king, Pinot Noir is queen, and she's Ugo d'Amore. She makes the greatest wines in the world, but she's got a bite to her. She can be a little bit of a mean queen. That's maybe why we love her so much. Pinot Noir is thin skin, and it's really only grows in very unique areas. It's like the restaurant business, location, location, location. We've been making Pinot for 37 years. I've had it down in Bienesito, in Santa Barbara. I had an Oregon vineyard up in Newburgh for 12 years, and in 7 other different AVAs in California. And quite frankly, we learned to make decent Pinot Noir by making a lot of mediocre Pinot Noir. But we learn from our mistakes. And those mistakes are pretty grand. 1, location, you gotta have the right vineyard. 2, the vineyard and the winery have to be right next to each other, or very close. That's why we failed in Oregon. We put them on a big truck, gorgeous grapes. They traveled 1,000 miles to California. By the time they got back there, they were subprime. You have to harvest at night, like the Chardonnay, because again, even more so with Pinot Noir, you have to protect those beautiful grapes because they're easily torn open. And because it's such a delicate grape, any of those harsh phenolics from oxidation will affect the wine. And probably the biggest thing we've learned with Pinot Noir is culling, knocking out anything that's just not pristine fruit. The real culprit is raisins. And for the longest time we did this by hand, which was nuts because after 15 minutes, I don't care who you are, there's all the grapes going by and the lulling of the shaking table, you fall asleep. You could put a Barbie doll down it and you wouldn't catch it. But now technology is caught up and we have this gorgeous machine called a Palanque, an optical sorter. We've had ours for 8 years and I love it because I can honestly say we have lasers on our crush pad now. Austin Powers would be proud. This machine literally, it de-stems the grapes, they fall down on a conveyor belt and that they spread them out into these little ruffles and then it goes under a high-def camera and a laser tracks it and in a split second it takes a picture of it against a template, whatever Jamie puts in there, and it decides right away if it's a good grape or a bad grape. And then air knives, little puffs of air go pop, 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 and all the bad grapes get pushed out and all the pristine grapes go forward. And what it's knocking out is raisins. And why raisins are so shitty is we open top ferment, right? And as those raisins fall in there, if we didn't get them out, they're little sugar bombs. And we're fermenting for 14, 21 days. Over that time, those little sugar bombs start to soften up. And then when we press it, we didn't expect those sugar cubes in there. And when we press it, we thought our wine would be at 24 bricks. Now it's up there at 28. And what do? Right? You have to either add water or you have a hot fermentation. Either way, you're screwed, particularly with Pinot Noir. So this Palanque has saved our bacon. So location, 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 grapes. Now, again, Pinot is a difficult grape. I beat that dead horse there. Sorry, Ella. She's a horse person. What Jamie taught me is the strength of Pinot Noir. Keeping to her idea of blending, I'm like, okay, what are you going to blend in? I'm thinking she's going to blend Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc. maybe Pinot Noir, maybe a Gamay, some lighter red grape. You know what she decided to add? The gnarliest grape out there that I know, Petit Verdot. Why would anybody add the inkiest, stinkiest, high acid wine to Pinot Noir? That's what she taught me. I thought she was going to steamroll over Pinot Noir, right? But no, what she did, she wanted, because Pinot can be very high acid, but not the great acid that you want. It can be up there about 3.4 on the pH scale. By adding the Petit Verdot, it helps raise that acid, soften that acid just a bit, and add a textural component to it. She equates, I didn't know she was this smart. She said, remember those cathedrals in Europe, how they have those flying buttresses? And they're there so they could open up the sides with those beautiful rose windows with the stained glass and let the light shine through. You know, Notre Dame and all those great ones. She uses the Petit Verdot, like those flying buttresses, to add structure to the wine so that it's beautiful Pinot Noirness, like a pedestal. It can raise those flavors by helping soften out the acid. And then Petit Verdot itself adds color, and then it adds a little bit of a darker fruit, so it pushes it from cranberry to maybe a wild strawberry, but also makes it a good California Pinot. You know, you're not drinking Oregon or anything from Europe. It's still, if you do the thumb test where you put your thumb down and look at it, you can still see that it's still Pinot, but it's got that extra little gumption in the middle that I never believed in a million years Petit Verdot could do. I thought we fought about this, but she's very stubborn, and thank God, because this is probably the lead SKU in the imagery portfolio because it has that little Petit Verdot zest in the middle. We're not talking a lot, we're talking about 9%, but it really works here. What do you think? To get that going. So those are really good pairings. We always think it has to be pizza, salmon, pork, but sand on a beach, that's a great pairing. Davis came up with those ones, but any vineyard now, you always have a little bit of the old school Dijon clones and maybe some modern clones in there. Each one has its own idea on how Pinot Noir should taste. It's amazing the history of that grape. I thought it was a modern one. I thought Cabernet or Syrah was one of the older grapes, but no, it's Pinot. All right, Cabernet, the dog, the lead dog, the king. Where Pinot is cranky, Cabernet is the exact opposite. I kind of call it the Bubba grape because it loves just as laid back. It's got a big, thick skin. It can take a beating. It just loves to bask in the sun. It's got his posse, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, Malbec, little gang of five. It's kind of a fun, and he never likes to be by himself. He's always got to be blended with somebody else. Cabernet, it's the late season. It loves just to hang out there. It can take a little bit of rain, but man, there's no grape like Cabernet. It gets into deep levels. It's like a philosophy, Cabernet. I love growing Cabernet because it really depends on how much sunlight you get in on that canopy and how deep the roots go. And this is where I really got my mind changed. Is how you grow is about deep roots. When we first moved out to California, we were growing like everybody else, and I call that spray and pray.
right? It's the Monsanto guy would show up with a big bag of methyl bad shit, drop it off, and say, "Go to it, boys," and you go put it in your nifty 50 spray rig and go nuke your vineyards. You'd spray against that canopy and you'd kill all the thrips and bugs in there, birds, everything would die. And then I know, sucks, right? And then all the rest of it, that's not even, at least you can see the birds that are dead. All of a sudden all that stuff falls down on the biggest biomass on the planet, topsoil, and it dies. Remember, our vineyards were left vacant for years, decades. And all of a sudden you start spraying multiple passes of that chemical and that beautiful biomass collapses. Now the soil condenses. Instead of being this beautiful brown, flaky, moist, what they call friable soil, now complex, becomes hard pan. Now the roots have a hard time. Instead of flying through there and connecting with each other, have all that mycorrhizal growth, now they kind of pull back. What does the farmer do? Now he's got to fertilize. So he puts chemical fertilizers on the surface, activates that with water, and you end up getting this big greasy plume at the surface. And the roots, instead of going, ooh, down for my nutrients, I'm going to go, wait a minute, it's right here. I'm getting breakfast in bed. So it just sits there, a very shallow anemic root system right at the surface because it's being fed. Now, when you look at the grapes, you're going, oh man, look at my leaves. They're nice and green. They look healthy. I got great stem growth. The berries are looking good, but you're growing water balloons because it's all about sugar there, right? You're not getting any terroir, that beautiful French word for a sense of place. And you could, by how much water you turn, you can go 3 tons, 5 tons. Man, I know vineyards in the Central Valley that get 18 tons by just putting a ton of water out there. Literally, water balloons. It's amazing. We don't want that, okay? So we learned the hard way. We love this beautiful piece of property we're on. And after a decade of farming this way, we started to see erosion issues. Every time it would rain, because now the soil's not knitted, it would run away. We had slough-offs. We got phylloxera, a root louse. We got nematodes. And worst of all, our wine quality wasn't getting better. As the grapes grow, the roots should get deeper, you should get better fruit. It wasn't getting that way. So we realized we had a problem. Plus, we had a ton of kids growing on that property. Remember that 19? They're still babies. And now our water, our wells, are showing side effects of these chemicals. That is no bueno. So we went cold turkey. So instead of talking to the Monsanto guy, we kicked that guy out and we talked to a bug guy, an entomologist. And we said, how can we get rid of these pests without spraying chemicals? He goes, it's easy. You got to attract predatory insects. So what we did is, and people thought we were crazy, we grew big gardens in the middle of our vineyards, taking out, an acre, 2 acres of prime real estate and growing flowers. People thought we were nuts. But what they did is these flowers, they act as magnets for these insects. They're like insects when they see these big gardens. It's like Mardi Gras and Tinder. One come there to party, eat, propagate. And then they do what's called vectoring out. They vector outside about 15 to 20 rows deep, and they eat all the other insects around there. And then the birds eat those guys. And so you end up, instead of having this monoculture of just grapes because you put this chemical bubble over your property, you take that bubble away, now nature swims in there, and now everybody's trying to survive for themselves. Nobody's eating the grapes now, right? So now the roots can start to go down and go deep in that soil, right? Through that subsoil into that what we call the regolith. My winery's on the side of an old volcano, right? It's geological. It's crazy. The soil is basalt. Then you have red aggregate, then welded tufa, volcanic ash, obsidian, breccia. It's this layered soil. It's geological lasagna. And the deeper those roots go down, they send out lateral root hairs. Those minerals go up into the grapes and give it that fingerprint of where it's grown. Its own personal zip code, if you will. Terroir is what the French say, in the word authenticity. And that's why we farm this way, is authenticity. Get all that grime and grease and all that chemical bullshit out so that the roots can go deep into the soil. And we learned that with Cabernet, and now it happens with all of our grapes. Every one of these wines here is farmed at the very highest level of either certified sustainable, CCOF organic, or biodynamics, regenerative farming. These ones here are all certified sustainable, which means pushing all those chemicals out so that roots can go down deep. And that's super important for my family. And I think it's one of the reasons why these wines taste as good as they do, is because you're getting the true flavor of that site. Does it make sense? I know it's kind of an esoteric thing, but it's wild. And then remember, farming is resource intense, right? Take. That's why you have to, if you're going to be a good farmer and a good father and grandfather, in my case with Jamie, a good funkle, you have to replace that biological capital. And we do that with composting.
Thank you for joining me here at the Chef's Backyard for this fun evening listening to Chris Benziger tell us a little bit about how his wines are grown. If you listen in there, it's all about the care that's taken in the vineyards, and that's what helps him to create these beautiful wines. Go out, find some imagery, find some Benziger, find some of the tribute wines, and we'll see you soon here at the Chef's Backyard. If you enjoy cooking and recipe videos, make sure you subscribe.